is All India Radio in the program Spotlight. Now, we bring you a discussion on agricultural reforms. The participants are Ashok Tandon, political analyst, and Neelabh Srivastav, journalist.
As the sit-in of the farmers around Delhi borders continues for the fifth day today, the farmer leaders belonging to about 35 odd organizations today held a meeting with the central government, and that discussion was led by the Agriculture Minister, Mr. Narendra Singh, in central Delhi at Vigyan Bhavan. The government has now asked the unions to submit specific issues with regard to the 3 farm laws that were passed by the government recently, last session of the parliament. While the government has called these legislations very revolutionary and major reforms that will empower the farmers and the farm sector overall, and also help the enhancing in the income of the farmers and their associations have apprehensions that they will be at the mercy of big corporates, and the set system of the procurement at the mandis will be disturbed. And that is why they have reservations with regard to these 3 new laws. The next date for discussions, the 4th round of discussions, will be 3rd December. Mr. Tandon, how do you analyze these developments?
See, I think one very positive aspect of the entire episode is that there is a dialogue. In a democracy, dialogue is the only way forward to resolve any issue, whatsoever it may be, and therefore today's resumption of dialogue is a very positive sign. And this was the 3rd round. 2 rounds have already taken place. And since the talks remain inconclusive, there is going to be a 4th round on the 3rd of December. So I think this is a very, very significant positive sign that the agitating farmers and the Kisan unions, they have all come round and agreed to at least resume a dialogue, because there appeared to be a sort of a deadlock that there may not be any dialogue. So now dialogue has started, and therefore let's hope that in a very amicable way things can be sorted out and dialogue process is on. And of course, in today's meeting, the government side, the Agriculture Minister, Mr. Narendra Singh Tomar, and Piyush Goyal, they presented before the farmers' organizations, unions, the government viewpoint. After all, what prompted the government to bring about these agriculture reforms? After all, no government in a democracy can even think of being anti-farmer. So whatever the government has done in the larger interest of the agriculture sector and the farm community, the government presented its case. And then, of course, there were certain concerns and reservations in the minds of the farmer organizations. They also put on the table their concerns, and the dialogue, I think, continued for about 3.5 hours, and 35 organizations of the farmers from different parts of the country participated in it. And this dialogue will now be resumed again on 3rd of December, and that will be the 4th round also. So I think in that way, let's hope that there will be a breakthrough, and the government has said that they have an open mind. They are willing to discuss and consider all the concerns of the farmer. They will give, whatever explanation they want, and in that context, I do hope that the dialogue is the way forward, and the reason will prevail, and we do hope that there would be a breakthrough. And the government has also appealed to the farmers that since we have already resumed dialogue, you better call off this trade, because in this pandemic it's not advisable for such a lot to be sweating on the road and all that. It is in the larger interest of the community also, their families also. So having made the appeal, the government is willing to discuss all the issues, and I think this is where today's dialogue stands.
Coming out of the meeting, Mr. Tandon, both the sides, the government and also the association, the farmer representatives, have said that while they have not arrived at a conclusion today, very specific point where the government said, please tell us about your specific issues. Now, one issue, if we can discuss about, is the MSP, or the minimum support price. So the government has been saying that these 3 with the passage of these three laws, there is nothing to tinker with the MSP, while there has been the concern of the farmers and their association that MSP is going to be disturbed. That is where their maximum concern is. And also, the government has said that they can set up a committee to look into the issues and probably explain in a detailed fashion as to what these three laws actually mean.
Certainly. In fact, if you remember, while piloting these bills, Mr. Tomar had assured on the floor of the House also that MSP will continue. There's no question of discontinuing the MSP. And also, the mandis will also continue. But these are the two major concerns. And to redress those concerns, the government side today offered to constitute a high-level panel and requested the agitating farmers to nominate 4 to 5 of their prominent leaders. And this committee will also include agriculture scientists, experts on the agriculture sector, and of course the government official. And whatever needs to be done to redress their concerns, this committee can do that. And therefore, you better accept this proposal. Now the farmer leaders have gone back and they will now be discussing among themselves how to proceed. And maybe when they meet for the next round on the 4th of December, they will certainly may come before at the negotiating table with certain concrete suggestions. But meanwhile, they have said that they are not withdrawing the agitation, is continuing. And but of course, I think the doors for negotiations are still open. Both sides have an open mind because in a democracy, through dialogue, all the problems can be resolved. And the government is also very keen because government is taking this whole issue very seriously because it involves so many other factors also. And I think the committee proposal, although not accepted today, but it has not been totally, rejected. And let's wait when the farmers' leaders come at the negotiating table on the 4th of December. And let's do hope that things will move smoothly and there could be a breakthrough.
Another point of contention that the farmer associations have said that these three laws will also open the agriculture sale and marketing outside the notified APMCs, Mr. Tandon. This is the agriculture produce market committees. MSP at one side. I remember talking to you, we were discussing and you said that MSP doesn't, even the committee that approves the MSP doesn't have a legal backup. So these contentious issues, what could be the way forward? How would the government explain? Would it also explain the farmers as to what exactly contains in these laws?
See, the government has repeatedly given the assurance that the MSP would continue and the mandis will also continue. But farmers, they want this assurance, particularly regarding the MSP, to be given a legal framework. They want a written assurance, not only through a statement, but they want this to be incorporated in this statute book. But the government said that MSP has never been part of any legal framework, and since it has been continuing for decades, and therefore it will continue, we can give you an assurance. In fact, the Prime Minister the other day said that, this government has, bought grains worth of 5 lakh crore on the MSP. And earlier, the previous government had bought only 2 lakh crore on MSP. And this government's purchase on MSP is 2.5 times more. And that 2.5 times more money has reached the farmers. So therefore, there is no question of the government being anti-farmer. And the Prime Minister has also, in fact, cautioned these agitating leaders that some political parties may be taking advantage. They are trying to mislead you. Why don't you at least give the government a chance to explain to you? And that is exactly what the government minister did today.
The opposition parties have also spoken. Various political parties have said that this is a democratic system, the farmers have right to protest and that they should be heard and their issues. The kind of voices that we are hearing, in that context, Mr. Tandon, how do you see the various political parties which are sometimes aligned also to the farmer association. So they're kind of, and also the government at various forums. You spoke about the Prime Minister talking about it from multiple forums, other cabinet ministers also. The PIB I was seeing on the social media, the Press Information Bureau also brought out some myths, a kind of a tabular column where it said that these are myths and these are not the facts. So what kind of a communication that has happened vis-a-vis the opposition parties and the government cabinet ministers as such?
See, opposition obviously would like to exploit the situation, and that's why parties like Congress and others are lending support to this agitation. But the main grounds they are also talking about is that there needs to be an assurance about the minimum support price, because they say that, and like others are also saying, that these laws will deprive the farmers of the minimum support price and leave them at the mercy of the corporates. Now, this particular apprehension has been dispelled number of times, and even today, while giving presentations before the farmers' leaders, the government did that. But the question is now some other elements have entered into it, and there is also apprehension. Although all the farming leaders are very well established, reasonable people, and that is why they are very peaceful, but there are apprehension that certain antisocial elements may try to exploit the situation and vitiate the whole atmosphere. And, the other day some pro-Khalistani slogans were also raised. So all these apprehensions are causing concern to the government, because the law and order also has to be seen. And therefore, the reason why the government wants the farmer leaders to come to the negotiating table, get a government viewpoint, and also present their own viewpoint, and let's try to find out a way out. And therefore, I do hope, and that's why, government's seriousness about the dialogue was quite apparent this morning when at the residence of the BJP President J.P. Nanda, there was a very high-level meeting which was attended by Mr. Amit Shah, Mr. Rajnath Singh, beside others. And they also want that normalcy should be restored as early as possible, and peace must prevail. So considering all these things, I think the government is trying to realize the situation, that opposition is trying to exploit the situation, and therefore it is all the more necessary to insulate the agitating farmers, leaders, or Kisan organizations from the political parties, because this issue should not be politicized, because it's a question of for the welfare of the farmers and the agriculture sector. On that, there are no two opinions. The entire country, all political parties, including the ruling party, and the government, they all agree that we are all committed to the welfare of the farmers and for the betterment of the agriculture sector. And that's right. Why the government has been repeatedly saying, look at the acts we have the legislation we have enacted. They are all for the growth in the agriculture sector, and in building infrastructure and supply chain from the farm produce in the national and the global markets. They are all intended to help small farmers who perhaps don't have means either to bargain for their produce or to get better price, or invest in technology to improve their production. So I think, considering all these things, I'm still hopeful that reason will prevail, and very soon perhaps normalcy may be restored.
There is this talk about the middleman also. While the farmers associations and the farmers representatives say that this is not a middleman or a bichauliya, but a service provider, and the government says that these three laws ensure that the middleman is removed and the income of the farmers directly go into their hands. So this is not only empowering the farmer but also increasing his income. Your comments on this very briefly.
See, basically these acts are intended to help small farmers, as I said earlier, and the act on the agriculture markets seeks to allow farmers to sell their produce outside APMC mandis to whosoever they want, because farmers get better prices through competition,
right,
cost cutting on transportation.
I'm afraid
but that does not mean that the mandis will disappear. That does not mean the MSP will disappear. So therefore, the act could, I mean, I'm sorry to say, but the act could mean
I'm afraid,
that
Mr.
states
Tandon, we are running out of
lose
time
their
now.
commissions and mandi fees. That is the apprehension.
We are running
the
out of
states
time.
also.
Right. Thank you very much for joining us.
You were listening to a discussion on agricultural reforms. The participants were Ashok Tandon, political analyst, and Neelabh Srivastav, journalist. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio.